To our monthly virtual special interest group. My name is Todd Terrazas, and I'm the Executive Director of AILA. And right now, today, we've got Aaron Smothers, who's going to be giving a lightning talk around his company and what he's doing with text-to-image. And so, yeah, this whole talk will be centered around generative AI. This is a very easygoing type of event that we do per month. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, want to talk, use the chat, and then after Aaron's presentation, we can definitely have you on screen as well, and just start having a little fireside chat together. And so, if that's all good with everyone else, I'll stop chatting. I'll turn off my video, and I'll let Aaron take it from here, and then we'll get into a group conversation about the topic at hand. And so, without further ado, Aaron Smothers.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it. Todd and I met at an event not that long ago, and I was showing people a demo that this is the first time I'll show the demo, and it will be recorded for posterity. So the demo gods hate everybody. That's the headline here. So let's see how far this will go. But I was doing the demo on my phone at an event, and they said, "Oh my God, you have to know Todd with AILA." And they were a little flabbergasted that I didn't. My reason is I'm new in LA, and will newly be gone. We're traveling around. So with that little bit of context, my name is Aaron Smothers. I get to be the technical CEO of a company called TextToImage. It is called TextToImage because that is the initial problem that we set out to solve. It's an open problem in AI. We did so, and then we realized as we were sort of solving the problem and showing it off and then moving on to the next set of problems, that we had built a platform for commercializing AI research, which is pretty cool because our intention was to set out and make a company that focuses on doing important non-urgent things and letting those compound over time. And since we've modified that slightly to really focus our areas of urgency specifically around agency, those things that people want to do. Put a pin in that. That's really important for what we will talk about when it comes to generative AI and generative art in particular. And so as we built out this platform and we talked to people, everyone was very intrigued by the idea of fully generated images. I will be showing some fully generated images before we're done here, and then inviting for input. So there, I'm on the hook for a live demo. It's been a very interesting ride. We are in the process of launching. If I seem just a little bit tired, it's because what are weekends? We've had some good weekends of effort, and you'll be hopefully hearing more about what we're doing around taking the kind of hottest art space right now, which is NFTs. If you're not at a Sotheby's auction, I guess, and doing some performative art, allowing people to pick what mutators they want AI models, and some other settings, and really showcasing for a much wider audience what is possible when it comes to generative art. So without further ado, I think these things should be anchored in showing versus telling. I would like to share my screen, hopefully to the exact right thing. And we will take it away from there. Hold on here. Share and nope, not email. We don't care about that. Here we go. So this is our image generation. Ironically, not currently hooked up to our text-to-image solution. I'm going to volunteer a first bit of text input. I know that this model is, you can see on the right side here is animals, and we were experimenting with taking input from the model and filtering it back in. So I'm going to go with a classic happy dog Van Gogh, right? And let's see if that even ends up being a dog. And then we are going to generate with text. So one of the really important notes here is the time period. So if you've used available generators, some of them, without naming names, can take about a minute 36 seconds. I believe this particular one is hooked up to be approximately 45 seconds. So we should be able to get a couple of very interesting iterations from y'all's input, assuming it works at all, because again, the demo gods hate everybody. Ah, there it is. There is our happy Van Gogh dog. Now, before I go on and I get accused of doing any canned input, Todd, what do you want to have as input for the next one?
Ice cream.
Ice cream. That's gonna end up being interesting. Ice cream. So we're gonna meld ice cream with some randomly selected animal. Let's see what happens. Food ones get uncanny valley pretty quickly. So what's happening here? I want to talk about what's happening here because we want to talk about the art. I want to zoom out really wide. What we're doing as a company, it's three things. The what we're doing is creative expression. The how we're doing it is generative computing. And the why we're doing it is agency, right? The why and the what are obviously very connected. As we get to the point where we can delve into our, artistic endeavors as people, we get to explore our own agency. Yep, I'd call that a cone cat mouth. And let's not do that again. Let's do another one. What's your input this time? I did not prep Todd for this, everybody, just as a heads up.
Let's let someone from the audience ask.
Okay, perfect. As we do these, which sometimes these get quite interesting, we can, I'll continue telling the story. What's a good option? Todd, can you read them out to me?
Oh yeah. So a fox, and then fox was the first one. Then chinchilla was the second one.
Okay, a fox. I wanna encourage. So we'll do a fox oil painting, right? So let's give it a little bit of artistic license there. So that's what is happening on a very broad scale. Generative computing for us is not just images. Generative computing is how we solve the text-to-image problem as well. We generated the underlying meaning of the input text. We can take a paragraph of text and find an image that is associated with that meaning. The place you can go and use that is imagely.io. That's a product we stood up just to make it useful for writers. So you can go up to a paragraph and then get the appropriate image back. And that was the first thing we used generative computing for. Now we've gone to images. There it is. Slightly oil painting. Now what was the next one? A chinchilla?
Yeah, chinchilla.
I'm gonna embarrass myself here. So I gotta numbers and abstract thinking. Yes. Spelling, no. I blame Hooked on Phonics. A chinchilla, and now we're going to do here. So thus far, we've done 50 iteration steps. So I'm going to go 75. And I'm going to, I want to do oil painting again to kind of give you all some. Okay, as that's going. So we're on images now. Images are significantly more complex for us than natural language processing or the text to image process. The next one that we're aiming for is characters. And there's some really amazing research coming out right now. We're waiting for preprints on some papers for character animation specifically. The one after that is simulation. So physics simulations, think environments that are with objects that are interacting with each other. And then after that is animation. There it is. That is absolutely not a chinchilla. That is a cat. So this particular model does not have any chinchillas in it. However, I will say it probably got the oil painting really well. Any other suggestions? Otherwise, I can continue bringing them in, or we can do, let's see.
Bird eating seeds.
Bird eating seeds. This is perfect. What you've just described is the object being generated doing something, which is, 50 is the default, which is exactly why the next thing we're doing is characters, because that is what people are pulling from us. So what we need to do from this point, from a generative perspective, is to generate a bird, and then we need to rig it up as a character, and then give it something to do. So that would be a combination of bird and simulation. Now, these approximate that. So like jumping or some verb, right? Some verb subspace approximates that, but it's not doing it in what I would say a complete way, which is effectively what we're doing on these next 3 steps. So that's not a bird. That's a jaguar, a lion morphed with a bird, and there are no seeds. So let's see if it will handle switching to human faces. So golden statue, it's one of my favorite inputs. We'll do 100 iterations. Sometimes it doesn't like switching models. Also, if you're playing with this at some point in the future, I would recommend to never use the input delightful eyes. If y'all aren't familiar with the subject of uncanny valley, it's particularly serious when we're dealing with human faces. That's the underpinning reason why clowns are scary. And something about delightful eyes as a set of input makes some real unseeable, like you can't unsee it, images. We have built a platform, as I mentioned before, and our approach to this is to use micromodels. So there are many models in the run up to this, and then we're using something called StyleGAN3, which is where we're actually putting the images in. And we've unlocked it to be a few-shot learning. Few-shot learning is a space of AI where you can take a relatively speaking small set of images and train a model with it via something like transfer learning. Transfer learning is not a requirement of few-shot learning, but it is currently the best approach. That means in my computer vision, past, I've been known to quote. I've been quoted as saying, 50,000 images. Is that really enough to get started here? And the answer was no. It was not enough to get started. 50,000 images is a lot of images. That's a lot of data. With few-shot learning, we can get that down to about 100. 100 is our approximate floor right now. We are very, let's see what happens. There it is, golden statue, human faces. Who wants to do a human faces input? And please don't say delightful eyes. I'll come up with another one.
Well, this one said angry panda body.
Angry panda body. Okay. I'm trying to add a panda body. So let's take that down to 50 iterations. I'm curious to see what this is. Now, as you can see here, we can also take images and do image in, image out. So this begins to get very interesting into a very interesting area of like who owns the outcome image, how much different is it, you know, et cetera. And this is one of the reasons I really am quite interested in speaking with more and more artists that are in the generative space. A lot of times I end up talking with, you know, other founders and technology entrepreneurs that are wanting to do this kind of thing. So this is an open call to communicate with more artists who are in this space already, because there's this distinction between copyright ownership and, you know, all the legal substrate and foundations of copyright, and the distinction between inspiration and results. That is a cursed image. Yep. What else we got?
Human face Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, I have no idea if it has any people in it for legal reasons. Johnny Depp, let's try it. Oh, did I spell that right? I did. So I'm going to actually download this image. And we're going to use that as input for the animal model. Now, some of the applications here are really interesting. For example, we're using a micromodel approach, and we're facing off in competition against things like DALL-E 2, right? I'm not actually sure how many hyperparameters DALL-E 2 has. I've been very busy. I haven't read the paper yet, which is an indicator of how busy I've been, which means I've been too busy. But when they make a new foundational model, OpenAI, it tends to cost millions of dollars in electricity alone. Oh, look, it does have Johnny Depp. New input. Thanks for that. So now we're going to switch back over to animals. And we're going to choose a file. We're going to choose this. I'm going to add that photo. And then we're going to use that with no text input. And we're going to generate an animal using that as a style input to kind of give an illustration of what's possible. As we work with more artists, and these new major foundational models are created and push the envelope on what's possible, and we get to learn from them and incorporate the research, we're going to have some real ethics of creation issues. And it's nice to kind of go on record. Like I said, this is the first public display of this. To note that we're thinking about that from the earliest time. I don't like that so much. Let's try it again. That we're thinking about that from the earliest moment. One of my favorite examples to give is as this gets more and more refined, this space, you know, visual arguments are very persuasive. One thinks about political cartoons. If political cartoons didn't work, it wouldn't have been a profession for the last 150 plus years in newspaper format and longer than that, you know, in different formats across history. And with this kind of tooling, a very small number of people could produce what would otherwise take tens or hundreds of thousands of artists to create. Oh, there we go. The golden lion. And as I'm showing this, it's relatively simplistic, I recognize, but we're also not using politically charged input images to influence the output, nor do I want to do that here. But it's one of the things that I like to bring up, and I would love to see a much wider conversation had around what the ethics of creation are in this space. OpenAI as both a bit of a role model and competition, particularly as they released DALL-E 2, has done an exceptional job pre-commercialization with their text in, text out, their text-to-text generator, GPT-3. They are at the early stages with DALL-E 2, which is pretty advanced as far as expressive power, but it's non-commercialized, and they tend to take some time to kind of work through the ethics of things. What we're doing right now is being extremely selective with who we're partnering with and who we're powering. And I recognize that is putting ourselves in a pretty powerful position as far as potentially influence peddling. But we think we're up for that particular task. And as the first public display, if anyone has any questions along those lines of the ethics of what we're doing and how we're deploying it, I would be very interested. I would be especially interested to find questions that we haven't asked yet, right? So this is a second open call, and that open call is for questions that we haven't asked. Given the context of this so far, what questions do you think we should be asking? And that is that is one of my favorite formats of questions, and I think of that as the question search engine question. So the AI LA community at large, I'd be greatly appreciative if during this conversation, but also outside of it, you would sort of send those questions over and hold us to task a little bit. With that, this is the part of the demo. This is how much of the demo I wanted to show. I don't want to go further. Todd, I want to open it up to questions from you and then hand it over to you for kind of your format of questions.
Thank you, Aaron. I guess first question, I guess, is today how the product is as is. What really is like your go-to market? Like, what is the first? Who are your ideal first customers, right? Using this platform that actually use it for some kind of commercial purpose.
Yeah, so we actually have our first customers, which is really nice. We've been building for about 10 months now, preparing for many years. But we have a productized service. I'm not at liberty to say further than that, but in an agency in the mixed media space that wants to accelerate their internal process. That works for us right now from an ethics standpoint, because there's going to be a human reviewer before it goes out to an end user or end company. Some work with folks in the publishing space, taking generated text and associating the the text to image solution, where we grab in the future I will also demo this, where we have messy human input and we grab images, and now we're at the stage where we're grabbing those images and using them as input to then have these very different images come out, right, that are kind of inspired from these input images. That has started to find to resonate with people who have a content production, deadline and quality requirement. What ends up happening is you have a writing requirement to produce a lot of content in a very specific niche, and you run out of stock images extremely quickly. And if you don't have a artistic, kind of community to back you up, which most places that produce content do not, you're in some real pain. It takes a lot of time to source those images. So we are saving our end users, our end customers, our businesses that we're working with, time and allowing them to make more money.
I guess you were talking about earlier, you're leveraging smaller models than like the DALL-E, the OpenAI DALL-Es and all. Like, I guess where's the competitive advantage for companies like yourself compared to obviously OpenAI with their unlimited budgets, right?
Yeah, they're $1 billion from Microsoft.
Yeah. How do you differentiate and stand out?
Yeah. So first of all, those companies tend to publish, which we really appreciate. So basic science is hard. So I just want to give those companies props for accelerating the pace of AI research. They are building columns. We're building everything in between the columns, right? So we get to create this mesh network of AI models. So not only are we working with, individual styles as we're doing this few shot learning, micro model learning, not only do we get to build our own, I haven't shown you all the ones that we have now. We get to start doing some really smart, I say smart because it's a little beyond me and I get to work with mathematicians to do it, things to explore the space of these micro models. So my area of specialty in the AI space is designing systems from end to end, having pushed several to production. And one of the things that you really consider is how do you create flywheels of improvement as you get more use and you get more data? How can you improve the system as you go forward? So eventually, right now we're everything kind of in between these columns, but we're under no delusions that these columns will keep on getting bigger and bigger and be able to do more and more amazing things. And eventually we get to part one of our own together, but it will be with non-fungible data that's irreplaceable, a true unique mode. And our system does two things. The first one is it doesn't try to compete with research. It attempts to keep up with it. So as new research comes out, we get to deploy it into our platform very quickly. That's what we've set out to do. And the second thing is as we get more products across more verticals and industries, we get to keep up with the changing taste of users. Not necessarily on a scary individual basis, but based on what users are choosing to use, we'll send out, as we send out 3 options, right, or 9 options, or whatever the user experience requires. We've always talked with our prospective B2B customers and our current B2B customers and asked them for the feedback of which one of those 3 did their end user pick. And every single one, without cajoling, I mean, without issue, has said, yes, we'll happily hand that data back to you. Because the logic is, yes, we'll do something that improves this system for everybody.
When I was looking at this through your demo and everything, I was thinking more about like music videos and taking lyrics and being able to take a generative model approach to even producing a full-on music video. Have you seen that done yet, or have you any inclination of like doing something yourself where, again, you work with an artist and through their lyrics you're developing an entire music video on their behalf through a generative AI?
Yeah, we would be really interested in doing something like that. And that's, I mean, I've shown you what we built this demo about 6 weeks ago, and our engineering moves really, really fast. Is all I'll say there. But we'd be really interested in working with someone along those fronts. The other one that I've heard introduced that I thought was really cool as well is telling a visual story of a podcast.
Yeah.
Right. So you take the podcast and you convert it into text, and then you use the text to image, and you go through those steps. And I will say we're the only reason we haven't done that is because we've had other very important things to work on from an engineering standpoint. It's always a resource management game.
100%, yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, I was hoping that we were going to have a generative AI separate speaker on today, but the scheduling didn't work out. But it's all right. We're going to do this again for sure. It's a very interesting topic. I mean, people have been getting into talking about GANs and using it for deep fakes, right? But then, like, how do you use that same technology productivity, or for, like you're saying, like you don't have enough stock imagery, so how do you, produce things on the fly?
Right.
My question actually is, I'm thinking about, like, how Photoshop works within layers.
Yep.
Is there a means where the end result, like the things that you were showing us before, where you can actually take each object or each tile, and actually manipulate them on your own? So say, right, generative AI is doing this first part of, producing something, and then you give that end result to an artist to then take it to the next level for actual full for the end result.
And there are two really interesting things there. One, I love NVIDIA Labs. I as a research department, and of course their whole commercial aspect is do cool research, sell more GPUs, right? And I will happily buy more GPUs. They do a great job. They have this system called GAUGAN, GAUGAN 2, GAUGAN 2. Everyone here, please go play with it. They do this really interesting. It's limited in content. Our system is much broader in content, but we are definitely paying attention. And like, I think it was back in like 2010 or 11, someone asked Google if they were afraid of competing in video, online video. And they said, the space is growing so fast that all we can do is keep growing, and it's going to be a decade or more before we start bumping into other people in the space. And that's definitely where we are with generative art and generative computing in general. But GAUGAN 2 is awesome to play with because they do this amazing tiled approach, and it creates like a workspace. So you can generate, your landscape is one of the things they do. And then you can go into the tile that's got a mountain, and then you can give specific directions for something to be that mountain to be manipulated. Could we build something like that? Yes, absolutely. Do we want to? We would love to work with a company that wants to build that dashboard, right? Our dream state is to be really focused on the deep tech and support a bunch of horizontal technology adoption. We're doing vertical technology adoption now because you have to show what's possible, right? You have to spark the imagination of people that are building things. And that's what we're working on. But we definitely want to partner with those companies, the Photoshops of the world, who create those workspaces. The way we think about it is, first of all, we're not replacing the artist, right? Nature is artistic, right? Space is amazing. I'm not saying that humans are the only entity that creates art, but the creation of art is a very human endeavor. So we're not replacing the artist. We're attempting to build the 22nd century the 22nd century paintbrush. There it is. The 22nd century Facebook is not the same thing. Very different things. Anyway, so to answer your question, that's the first one. Yes, we're seeing how that's starting to work. Yes, we're very interested in that aspect of things. We would love to partner with someone who's really focused on the UX of that. The second thing is, we haven't talked about the legal substrate very much. This is where I will say I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. But no one currently can own AI generated images. There's no copyright. But some amount of human manipulation after that, or human interaction, turns it into a work of art. So that becomes a pretty interesting subject matter.
Does anyone else from the audience have a question? Please just show on your mic and say it, or type it in the chat.
So I have a question for Aaron.
Hey,
so hi, Aaron. So how do you, because you can just generate so many images with this, right? So how do you find the needle in the haystack, right? Because a lot of these images will not necessarily be that interesting or aesthetically compelling, right? How do you sift them?
So first of all, you're totally accurate. It looks like we generated maybe 8 images this evening, when in fact we generated well over 500 for starts. Because whenever I said 50 iterations or 100 iterations, the way that our system works, we actually generated 100 distinct images on the way to that one. So the first way to approach this problem is by recognizing that humans are still the best learning machines that exist. And we're looking at so many images, Stephen, and creating a lab environment to learn the nuances as in art, the production of art being an art itself. And then over time, particularly as we get user feedback, if you'll recall that point about users selecting which one that we presented them as they come back, we get to build a classifier, or not just a classifier, but we refer to it as a meta model. So think about DNA chains as our micromodels, and then we have our RNA and then the protein folding, and then the question is not necessarily what image is good, but what set of processes based on a given input from a given system results most likely in a good output. So we control the initial frame, not necessarily the output, though we're quite interested also in the space of just analyzing the image itself. But we have a lot more control around the initial frame. And then we get to build a meta model over time that controls all of those different chains of micromodels.
I see. Thank you.
I hope that just wasn't like jargon.
No, it was very interesting.
Okay. Thank you for assuaging my anxiety here. Any follow-on questions to that? Okay. So in the simplest form, the first step is to get real user feedback, and then to get that at scale by going through commercialization process.
I see. So it's kind of, you use the wisdom of the crowds, right, in this sense, right, to determine what is an interesting image or a beautiful image or a compelling.
Because there's always the question of interesting to whom and what, right? And if our intent very much is solving problems for people, then it's got to be people that define what is good.
Right. So you're doing something more complicated than just a single numerical score.
Yeah.
Is it hot or not? Right.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could solve in a lot of different ways for like contrast, the amount of contrast, the amount of color variation, and there are all kinds of, we can experiment with a lot of interesting math in the space and algorithms in the space. But at the end of the day, it's a human search function, right? I mean, like I said, at scale, we really want it to be at scale so that it's robust, right? So it's anti-fragile. But yeah, that's why we have to go commercial. We can't just keep building by ourselves. We have to release things, otherwise it falls over on itself.
Right. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that link.
No problem.
Yeah,
any more questions from the audience?
I want to say a special thank you to the person who asked for Johnny Depp as an input. We have not tested any celebrity like public image, like public people as input for the system, because we just keep making cats, which may be a little embarrassing, but like that's like, isn't that what the internet's for? So that's really, I'm going to take that back to my team, and we'll go explore that. It'll be intriguing.
We still have some time. I had some questions.
I would love to answer them or find other questions to pose.
Chat about them. Hi, my name is Philip. I was just curious how you thought about the models that you're using, how much you're modifying existing models. You mentioned you're trying to sort of as rapidly as possible take things that are there and make them available, thinking about a system design. When you're working with micromodels, do you have sort of like favorite open source things that are like sort of starting points for you to play with?
Oh, yeah.
Are you happy sharing sort of like the models that you're using that you're excited about and that you continue to
Oh,
follow?
Yeah, this stuff is open source. The way we're putting it together is still closed source. There's some ethical considerations before we would release all of that information. And then the data itself is pretty internal. However, as far as like what we're doing, we're really excited about talking about this stuff. So frequently people ask me, am I worried about competitors? And I'm like, yeah, I'm worried there won't be enough because we want to have conversations about this, right? It's a very, very big space, very hard. So no, I do not mind sharing it all. My favorite, so there's, I didn't show this one tonight just as a point of reference, but check out Glide, Glide, all caps, as like a good kind of just a single model that does one thing. You don't really have to do a lot of DevOps or build a whole platform to put it together. Just Glide itself is quite verbose when it comes to text input and output. And then, oh, what's your background, Philip, if you don't mind sharing?
My background's in computational neuroscience. I've done a bunch of AI.
Okay, sweet. I love style gaming. Love it. I mean, IDV Labs, I was thrilled. We set out to do generative computing. I knew the system we wanted to use, the platform we wanted to build. I was going to implement StyleGAN 2, and then they released StyleGAN 3, and I kind of freaked out for a couple of weeks. I'm still just a little bit freaking out. It's a major improvement. They do some amazing stuff. It's good. Google, we haven't deployed this yet, but Google Research, my screen's not being shared. I'm going to drop this in the chat for you, Philip.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure other people might be interested too. So if you have any links.
Google Research just released something that's just incredible. And that is I'll drop the tweet actually, and then you can grab whatever you want from it. Give me a second. Here it is. So they did a big set of like foundational models that they put together across computer vision and everything else. They call it Socratic models. So they're using language. This is the closest thing thus far. It's not exactly what we're doing, but it's in the same ballpark. And it's just amazing video caption. I mean, and if you're familiar with the video caption like problem space, the term is it ain't easy. And again, being too busy, I haven't read this particular paper, but I've started the review process. And this is with your background, I would dive into this. This is it starts getting really interesting from the way the system is interacting with the language models as a substrate, and then putting foundational models on top of the language models.
Cool. I'm gonna let someone else ask the question, but if no one else pipes up, I've got more.
Okay, sweet. Sounds like we should like chat outside of this as well.
All right, my social graces say I'm allowed.
You're good. I was going to just say, and they released a open source set of code under Apache 2.0. So okay. Go ahead.
So I guess the question is, you were mentioning there's this iteration term that you have there where it goes through 50 iterations every time it's generating an image. And so could you say something about what happens between, say, image iteration 40 and 41? Like what's actually happening there? Probably 40 is a full, complete, high resolution, or it's a full image, and 41 is also a full image. So what is the update step? What's it doing? What's happening between every step?
So at a high level, and my favorite example of this is the image in, image out solution, because it's like more visual. It's easier for me to think about and therefore talk about. As you take a reference image, and I say a reference image because it's like you have a human painter, right? And the painter is given a cat image, right? And then a reference image, and it said, paint that cat in the style of that reference image. And it paints the cat. And then we say, okay, do that 40 times. And every time you do that 40 times, take the new cat and paint it in the style of that reference image.
I think that's making sense. The style, is there something like every time you take an image, you analyze the image, and that does it run through a network and enter like a latent space? It becomes a vector somewhere.
Yes.
And then you take the vector, and then and that would be the content, maybe a content vector. But
Are you
then
familiar with segmentation learning?
What?
Are you familiar with segmentation learning?
Nope.
The process is actually a lot more complex than was just described. Because we take segments in generative adversarial neural networks, right? So style GAN stands for style generative adversarial neural network, right? It's actually GAN. We just shorten it to GAN. You have something that is generating an image, right? And it's trying to fool a classifier, which is why it's adversarial. The classifier uses segmentation learning to try on the new image to try to decide if it is from the original training set. I'm pausing. I hope it's for effect and not internet.
I'm with you. I don't know where there's other people in the audience here.
Right. Too. No. We can go in some depth. Also, it's been too long since I've gone through the process of it. So like we can go in, maybe pull in a couple of my team that want to know these things as well. I had at one point before the pandemic, this amazing paper review group in Austin. I was living in the Austin, Texas area, and we'd meet and just go through papers. And it was extremely enlightening. That would be a fun thing to rebuild, but maybe a little bit more open and digital.
Cool. Well, anyways, thank you for sharing what you have. I'm gonna sign off. But
I would recommend looking very specifically into classifiers. Using neural network ensembles, and then from classifiers moving up to generative adversarial neural networks. They're incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we're almost coming up to the hour. Just seeing if there's any more questions, or we can start talking about what should the next topic be for next month. So yeah, I guess any final comments or questions on the topic of generative AI for this discussion?
That tweet I linked to the multi-model approach, the Socratic model approach, provides a potential topic for the following month, which is the idea of very large language models being the base, like substrate of AI going forward, which is actually a little bit more controversial than it might at first appear. Because there's a lot of bias that we bake into them at this stage. Anyway,
I'm gonna be digging into this in a little bit. The Andy Zhang tweet.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
yeah, it's amazing.